Section 50 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 16. Purgatory, the third ring, anger, free will in the corruption of the world.
The gloom of hell, and of a night deprived of every planet 'neath a narrow sky, darkened as much as possible by clouds, ne'er made so thick a veil before my face, nor to my feeling was so rough in tissue, as was the smoke which covered us up there. For that permitted not of opened eyes, because of which my wise and trusty escort drew near to me, and offered me his shoulder. Even as a blind man walks behind his guide, in order not to go astray, and strike aught that might hurt him, or might even kill. So, going through that foul and bitter air, I listened to my leader, who said only,
"Take care that thou be not cut off from me."
Voices I heard, and each appeared to pray for peace and mercy to the Lamb of God, who taketh sins away. Their only prelude was Lamb of God, and all had but one word and intonation, hence among them all there seemed to be the fullest harmony. "Are those, then, spirits, teacher, whom I hear?" said I, and he to me,
"Thou judgest rightly. As on they go, they loosen angers not."
Now who art thou that cleavest thus our smoke, and yet dost speak of us as if thou still by monthly calends wert dividing time?
These words were uttered by a single voice. My teacher therefore said to me,
"Reply, and ask him if on this side one goes up."
and I, O creature that dost cleanse thyself, that beautiful thou mayst return to him who made thee, thou'lt hear marvels following me.
I'll follow thee as far as I'm allowed.
He answered,
And, if smoke permit not sight, hearing, instead, will keep us linked together.
I thereupon began, I go on high while in that swathing band which death dissolves, and through the infernal anguish came I here, and whereas God hath wrapped me in his grace so much that he would have me see his court by means entirely out of modern use, conceal not who thou wast before thy death, but tell it me, and whether toward the pass I rightly go, and be thy words our guides.
Lombard I was, and Marco was I called. Familiar with the world, I loved the worth toward which all men have now unbent their bows. For mounting upward, thou art going rightly.
He thus replied, and added,
I beseech thee, pray for me there, when thou shalt be above.
And I to him, I pledge my faith to thee, that what thou askest of me I will do, but with a doubt I'll burst, unless therefrom I free myself. Simple at first, it now is doubled by thy speech, which makes me, here and elsewhere, sure of that wherewith I link it. The world is certainly as wholly void of every virtue as thou tellest me, and is with evil big and overspread. But pray point out its cause, that I may see, and show it unto other men, for one puts it in heaven, another here below. At first he heaved a sigh profound, which grief to
Me
changed. Then,
brother,
he began,
the world is blind, and thou indeed comest hence. Ye that are living still attribute upward each cause to heaven alone, as though it moved everything with it of necessity. If this were so, free will would be destroyed within you, and no justice would there be in having joy for good and grief for ill. Heaven starts your inclinations, though I say not all. But even supposing that I did, light has been given to you for good and evil with free will, which, if it endure fatigue in its first fights with heaven, will afterward, if duly nourished, conquer everything, beneath a greater power and better nature ye freely lie, and that creates within you the mind, which heaven hath not in its control. Hence, if the present world go wrong, the cause is in yourselves, and should in you be sought. Of this I'll now a true spy be for thee. Forth from the hand of him who ere it lives delights in it, even like a little maid who weeps and laughs and wantons like a child, issues the simple soul, which knoweth naught, save that, proceeding from a joyous Maker, it gladly turns to that which pleases it. At first it tasteth things of little good; deceived thereby, it runneth after them, unless a guide or check divert its love. Hence, as a bit, a law must needs be set, a king must needs be had, who should at least the tower of the truthful town discern. The laws exist, but who sets hand to them? No one, because the shepherd who precedes can chew the cud, but hath not cloven hoofs. The people hence, who see their guide strive solely for those good things for which it longs itself, feedeth thereon, and asks for nothing more. Well canst thou see that evil leadership, and not that nature in you is corrupt, is what has caused the world to be so wicked. Rome, which once made it good, was wont to have two suns, which rendered visible both roads, that of the world and that of God. One now hath quenched the other. To the bishop's staff the sword is joined, and badly needs must one fare with the other, since, together joined, neither the other fears. Recall to mind, if thou believe me not, the ear of corn, for every grass is by its own seed known. Throughout the country watered by the Po and Adige, one used to find both virtue and courtesy. Ere Frederick had his strife, with safety it can nowadays be crossed by any who, through shame, refrained from speech with good men, or avoided intercourse. There are, indeed, 3 old men still, in whom the old age chides the modern, and who long for God to give them back a better life: Quirado da Palazzo, good Girardo, and Guido da Castello, better called the simple Lombard, as in France he is. Say, therefore, that to-day the Church of Rome, by joining in herself 2 kinds of rule, falls in the mire, and fouls herself and load.
"O Marco mine," said I, "thine arguments are good, and now I see why Levi's sons were from inheriting debarred. But which Gherardo is the one, who, as thou sayest, as sample of the people now extinct, remaineth to reproach this savage age?"
Thy speech deceives or tests me,
he replied,
for thou, addressing me in Tuscan speech, seem'st not to know who good Gherardo was. I know him not by other added name, unless I took it from his daughter Gaia. God keep you, for with you I come no further. Already whitening now, behold the light which rays out through the smoke, and I must go, the angels there, ere I be seen by him.
He thus turned back, nor would he hear me more.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 16. Section 51 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 17. Purgatory, the third ring. Anger. Instances of punished anger. The angel of peace. Love.
Reader, remind thyself if e'er a fog o'ertook thee on a mountain, one through which thou couldst not see in any other way than moles do through the membrane o'er their eyes. How, when the damp, thick mists begin to thin, the sun's orb feebly pierces them; and quickly with thine imagination come to see how I first saw the sun again, which now was at its setting. Thus, as I mine own was matching with my teacher's trusty steps, from such a cloud I came into the beams, already dead upon the shores below. O thou imagination, which at times dost steal us so from outer things, that though 1,000 trumpets blow, one hears them not, what moveth thee, if sense contribute naught? A light which takes in heaven its form impels thee, freely, or by a will which sends it down. The vision of her cruelty, who changed her form into the bird, which most delights in song, appeared in my imagination. And hereupon my mind was so shut up within itself, that nothing that was then received by it came to it from without. Then into my high fantasy there reigned one crucified, contemptuous and proud in aspect, and as such he met his death. Around him were the great Ahasuerus, Esther his wife, and righteous Mordecai, who so whole-hearted was in word and deed. And as this picture of its own accord broke up, as doth a bubble when it lacks the water it was formed withal, a maid rose in my vision next, who bitterly was weeping, and was saying,
Why, O Queen, didst thou through anger wish to be no more? Lavinia, not to lose, thyself hast slain, and now hast lost me. Mother, this is I, who, ere I mourn another's loss, mourn thine.
As sleep is broken, when unwonted light strikes closed eyes suddenly, and being broken quivers before it wholly dies away, even so did my imagining break up, as soon as on my face there smote a light brighter by far than we are wont to see. I turned around to notice where I was, when lo, a voice which said,
The ascent is here.
From every other interest turned my mind, and made my will so eager to behold the speaker that when such it never rests until it sees its object face to face. But as before the sun which whelms our eyes and veils its figure through excess of light, so likewise here my visual powers failed.
A godlike spirit this, who, though unasked, is pointing out to us our upward path, and with his own light is himself concealing. With us he deals as one would with himself, for he that waits till asked, when seeing need, inclines already meanly to refuse. To such a bidding let us now accord our feet, and try to climb ere darkness come, for later one could not, till day returned.
Thus said my leader then, and I with him turned toward a flight of stairs our feet, and I, when on its first step, near me felt, as 'twere, the motion of a wing, and on my face a fanning, while a voice said,
Blessed are the peaceful, who are free from evil wrath.
So high above us now were those last beams which by the night are followed, that the stars were coming out on many sides. And, oh, my strength, why dost thou fade away so fast? I to myself was saying, for a truce I felt was set the powers of my legs. We now were where the flight of stairs went up no further, and as motionless we were as is a vessel when the shore is reached. And for a while I waited to find out if aught upon the new ring could be heard. Then toward my teacher turning round, I said, Say, my dear father, what offence is purged in this ring, here where now we are? Although our feet keep still, let not thy talking cease. And he to me,
The love of good, when scant of what it should have been, is here atoned. Here beats again the ill-retarded oar. But now, in order that thou understand more clearly still, turn thou thy mind to me, and some good fruit thou'lt gather from our stay. Neither Creator,
he began,
nor creature was e'er devoid of either innate love or that which conscious is, and this thou knowest. The innate love is always free from error, but the other kind can err through evil aim or through deficient or excessive strength. While well directed toward the primal goods and toward the secondary self-restraint, it cannot be the cause of sinful pleasure. But when it turns toward evil things, or runs to good with more or less zeal than it ought, the creature then against his Maker works. From this, then, thou canst understand that love must be the seed in you of every virtue, and every deed that merits punishment. And now, since love can never turn its face from its own subjects' welfare, from self-hate all are secure. And since one cannot think of any self as being from the first divided and existing of itself, all hearts are thus debarred from hating him. It follows that, if I in arguing judge well, one's neighbour's is the harm one loves, and this is borne in three ways in your clay. There's he who on the abasement of his neighbour his hope of rising sets, and only longs that from his greatness he may be brought low. And he who fears the loss of power, favour, renown, and honour, should another rise, and grieves so that he loves the contrary; then he, who by injustice seems so shamed that greedy he becometh for revenge; and such must needs prepare for others' harm. This triform love is wept for here below. But now I'd have thee hear about the other, which runs to love in a corrupted way. All apprehend confusedly a good wherein the mind can rest and long for it, and therefore every one attempts to reach it. If slothful be the love impelling you to see or win it after just repentance, this present cornice tortures you for that. Another good there is, which never makes men happy. It is not real happiness, nor the good essence, fruit and root of all that's good. The love that yields too much to that is wept for in 3 rings above us here. But why it's reckoned threefold I say not, that thou mayst seek the reason for thyself.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 17. Section 52 of the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, translated by Courtney Langdon. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Purgatorio, Canto 18. Purgatory, the 4th ring. Sloth. Love and free will. Instances of punished sloth.
The lofty doctor, having ended thus his argument, was looking in my eyes, eager to see if I seemed satisfied, and I, who by new thirst was still spurred on, was silent outwardly, and in me said, My many questions trouble him perhaps. But that true father who perceived the wish, which being shy did not disclose itself, by speaking first emboldened me to speak. Hence my vision, teacher, in thy light becomes so keen, that clearly I discern all that thy talk implieth or unfolds. I therefore beg of thee, sweet father dear, explain to me why thou ascribest to love every good action and its contrary.
Direct thine understanding's sharpened eyes toward me,
He said,
and clear to thee will be the error of the blind who pose as guides. The mind, which is created prone to love, inclines toward everything that pleases it, when roused by pleasure to activity. Your faculty of apprehending draws an image from a reality, and so displays it in you that your mind is caused to turn to it. And if thus turned your mind inclines thereto, that tendency is love, is nature bound in you again by pleasure. Then, just as fire, by reason of its form, moves upward, being made for mounting thither, where in its element it longer lasts, even so the captive mind begins to yearn, a motion of the soul, and never rests until the thing it loveth gives it joy. Apparent to thee now can be the extent to which the truth is hid from those that claim that each love in itself deserveth praise, because, perhaps, its object in itself seems always to be good, and yet not good is every seal, though good may be its wax.
Thy words, together with my heeding mind, I answered him, have shown me what love is. But this hath made me bigger with a doubt. For if love from without us is born in us, and if the soul can do naught else, her doing all right or wrong is no desert of hers. And he,
What reason sees here I can tell thee. For aught beyond its ken, look thou alone to Beatrice, for that's a work of faith. Every substantial form which is distinct from matter, and is also joined with it, hath in it a specific power collected, which, save in operation, is not seen, and only shows itself in its effects, as life doth by its green leaves in a plant. None knows, however, whence the understanding of first cognitions comes, or whence the bent toward those first appetites which are in you, as zeal for making honey is in bees. This first will, hence, deserves nor praise nor blame. Now, that all others be conformed to this, the power which counsels inborn is in you, and ought to hold the threshold of assent. This is the source, whence comes the ground of merit in you as it gathers in and winnows out your good and guilty loves. Those who in reasoning attained the bottom perceived this inborn liberty and left the world the teachings of morality. Supposing then that every love that flames within you rises of necessity, within you lies the power to master it. This noble virtue is by Beatrice called freedom of the will. Hence see that thou recall it, should she speak of it to thee.
The moon in rising, close to midnight late, and looking like a bucket all on fire, was causing now the stars to seem more rare. As, counter to the heavens, it coursed the paths the sun inflames, whene'er the Roman sees it setting between the Sards and Corsicans. And now that noble shade whence Pietola hath greater fame than any Mantuan village, had put aside the load I laid on him. Hence I, who, as an answer to my questions, had reaped his clear and easy talk, remained like one confused because of drowsiness. But suddenly this sleepiness of mine was taken from me by a crowd of people, who back of us were circling toward us now. And as Ismenus and Asopus once along their banks saw maddened throngs at night, whene'er the Thebans needed Bacchus, such were those who, sweeping scythe-like round that ring, were coming on, from what I saw of them, by good-will ridden and by righteous love. And soon were they upon us, for the whole of that great crowd was moving at a run, and two ahead in tears were crying out,
Mary proceeded to the hills in haste.
And
Caesar, in order to subdue Ilerda, struck Marseille, then hurried on to Spain.
Quick, quick, lest time be lost through lack of love,
cried those that came behind them.
so that zeal in doing good may make grace green again.
O folk, in whom keen fervour now redeems perhaps the negligence and slowness shown by your tepidity in doing good. This man who lives, and truly I lie not, desires, when sunlight once returns, to mount, hence tell us where the nearest opening lies.
These were my leader's words, and one of those same spirits said,
Come on, behind us then, and thou wilt find the hole. So keen we are to keep on moving that we cannot stop. Forgive us then if lack of courtesy thou deem what we consider righteousness. I was San Zenos abbot at Verona, under the rule of worthy Barbarossa, of whom Milan in sorrow talketh still. And he has one foot in the grave already, who soon will for that monastery weep and grieve, because he had it in his power. For he his son, in body wholly sick, worse still in mind and also ill begot, has had installed in its true shepherd's place.
I know not if aught else he said or ceased, so far had he run past us now, but this I heard, and I've enjoyed retaining it. Then he who was my help in every need said,
Turn in this direction, and behold two coming on who give a bite to sloth.
Moving behind them all, they said,
The folk for whom the sea was opened up were dead before the Jordan had perceived their heirs, and those who with the son of Anchises could not endure to toil unto the end gave themselves up to lead inglorious lives.
Then, when those shades were separated from us so far that they no longer could be seen, a new thought made its way into my mind, whence many other different thoughts were born. And I between them so confused became, that wandering to and fro I closed mine eyes, and changed what I had thought into a dream.
End of Purgatorio, Canto 18.